Beloved, life can often feel like a sea stirred up by fierce winds. The harder we try to control the waves, the more exhausted we become, and the less peace we seem to find. But there is a profound truth that can change everything. When you truly put it all in God's hands, you open the door to a peace that surpasses all understanding. Today, let's explore how surrendering your burdens to Him doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping into the life of rest, trust, and purpose He designed for you. Peace begins with acknowledging that God sees the end from the beginning. So many of us live our lives caught in a cycle of fear, doubt, and anxiety because we forget this simple yet profound truth: in God is sovereign. He is not just an observer of your life's story. He is the author. Long before you faced your present challenge, He already knew it. Long before you cried out in desperation, He had already written a promise of hope over your life. This realization is not meant to make you passive, but to free you from the suffocating need to figure everything out on your own. When you wake up each morning, it can feel like there is a mountain of decisions to make, problems to solve, and uncertainties to manage. Your mind starts racing. What if this happens? What if that fails? How will I handle it if things go wrong? But the power of recognizing God's sovereignty is that you no longer have to carry the burden of every what if. You begin to rest in the assurance that there is nothing that surprises Him. He is not pacing the floors of heaven, worried about your future. His wisdom is eternal, His plan is perfect, and His love for you is unwavering. This understanding is transformative because it shifts your perspective. Instead of seeing your circumstances as random or cruel, you begin to see them as part of a greater tapestry, a divine design that you may not fully understand right now, but which is always guided by His hand. Consider the stories of those who came before you. Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. To any outsider, it would have looked like tragedy after tragedy. But what did Joseph himself say at the end? You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Joseph recognized that God had been orchestrating every detail, even the painful ones, to bring about a greater purpose. When you accept that God sees what you cannot, you stop living as if your peace depends on everything going right. Your peace becomes anchored instead in the one who is always right, always faithful. This does not mean life will be without hardship. Jesus Himself told us that in this world we will have trouble. But He also said, take heart, I have overcome the world. There is no problem too big for Him, no enemy too strong, and no pit too deep. Even when you feel lost, He knows exactly where you are and where He is leading you. Some people fear that acknowledging God's sovereignty makes them passive, as if trusting Him means sitting back and doing nothing. But that is not true faith. True faith inspires action. Not frantic, fear-driven action, but purposeful, peace-filled action. You do what you can, but you do it from a place of rest, knowing that the outcome is in God's hands. You stop living like everything depends on you and start living like everything depends on Him. Think about the relief that brings. You no longer have to manipulate people or force circumstances to bend to your will. You don't have to spend sleepless nights replaying conversations or worrying about tomorrow. You can do your part faithfully and then leave the rest to God. That is not laziness, that is wisdom. It is the difference between a builder who labors anxiously, fearing the house will collapse at any moment, and a builder who trusts the architect's design and the strength of the foundation. When God is your architect and your foundation, you can build your life with confidence. This trust also transforms your prayer life. Instead of coming to God with desperation rooted in fear, you come with confidence rooted in faith. You still pour out your heart, your struggles, your hopes, your pain, but you do so knowing you are speaking to the one who already knows and cares deeply. Prayer becomes less about convincing God to act and more about aligning your heart with His perfect will. It becomes a place of surrender where you say, Lord, I don't understand this situation, but I trust that you do. There will be moments when life feels unfair, when nothing makes sense, and when your heart cries out, why God? In those moments, it is natural to grieve, to feel pain, and even to wrestle with doubt. But even then, remember, this God is not distant. His sovereignty does not mean He is indifferent. On the contrary, it means he is intimately involved, working all things together for your good, even when it doesn't look like it. His ways are higher than ours, his thoughts deeper than ours, and his timing perfect, though rarely what we expect. Over time, as you walk with him, you begin to see glimpses of how he weaves even your greatest struggles into blessings. The heartbreak that taught you compassion, the setback that redirected you to a better path, the unanswered prayer that protected you from unseen harm, these become testimonies of his faithfulness. And with every testimony, your trust grows stronger. You begin to see not just what he does, but who he isaacs, a loving father, a wise king, and a faithful shepherd. Ultimately, recognizing God's sovereignty is the first step to experiencing peace beyond understanding. It is saying, God, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I know you hold tomorrow. And because you do, I can lay my head down tonight without fear. I can face each day with hope. I can live with open hands and an open heart, knowing that whatever comes, I am never alone, never abandoned, and never forgotten. So, my friend, choose today to rest in this truth. Lift your eyes from the storm around you and fix them on the one who walks above the waves. The God who parted seas, shut the mouths of lions, and raised the dead is the same God who holds your life. And in his hands, there is no safer, more peaceful place to be. One of the deepest truths we must embrace on our journey to finding peace beyond understanding is that we are not in control, and we were never meant to be. From the moment we wake until the moment we sleep, our minds often race to manage, fix, predict, and orchestrate every detail of our lives. We cling to the illusion that if we just plan enough, worry enough, or act quickly enough, we can prevent pain, guarantee success, and avoid disappointment. But the reality is this: so much in life is beyond our control. And when we try to hold on too tightly, we end up not with peace, but with exhaustion and anxiety. Letting go of control is not an act of weakness. It is an act of wisdom and faith. It's an honest recognition of our humanity and a humble acceptance that God is God and we are not. It means we stop carrying burdens that were never asked to carry and instead place them into the hands of the one who can truly handle them. When we try to control everything, people, timing, outcomes, and circumstances, we put ourselves in a role we were never designed to fill. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the rest and freedom God offers. Think about how much energy we spend worrying about things that never even happen. We worry about what people might think, about what might go wrong tomorrow, about things far outside our influence. This constant mental and emotional strain steals our joy and clouds our ability to hear God's voice. We become so consumed with fear that we cannot see the opportunities, blessings, and simple joys right in front of us. But when we make the conscious choice to release control, it's as if chains fall off our hearts and minds. We become lighter, freer, and more able to live fully in the present moment. Releasing control doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we stop planning, setting goals, or acting responsibly. Rather, it means we do all these things from a place of trust rather than fear. We make plans, but we hold them loosely. We act diligently, but we leave the outcome in God's hands. We care deeply about those we love, but we understand that we cannot change hearts or force decisions. This shift from control to trust transforms how we move through life. When you hold tightly to control, every setback feels like a personal failure. Every unexpected event feels like a threat to your security. Your mood rises and falls with circumstances beyond your control, leaving you exhausted and defeated. But when you choose to trust God, you anchor your soul to something unchanging. You learn to say, even if things don't go the way I planned, I know God is still good. Even if people disappoint me, God never will. Even if I don't understand, I trust his wisdom is greater than mine. The truth is, no matter how carefully we plan, life will bring storms we didn't see coming. Relationships end, doors close, jobs are lost, health changes, and loved ones disappoint us. In those moments, our illusion of control shatters. But what if instead of waiting for life to force us to let go, we chose today to open our hands willingly? What if we said to God, Lord, I surrender what I cannot control. I trust you with what is beyond me. That surrender is not a one-time act, but a daily practice. Each day we may need to remind ourselves, I can't control what people think of me. I can't control tomorrow, but I can choose to trust God today. This daily release of control is deeply liberating. It allows us to live in the present rather than being trapped by fears of the future or regrets of the past. It allows us to love people freely without trying to fix or change them. It helps us show up fully in our work, our relationships, and our calling without being paralyzed by fear of failure. And most importantly, it draws us closer to God. Because when we stop trying to be in control, we start depending on Him more deeply. Many of us fear that if we let everything will fall apart. But what if the opposite is true? What if holding on too tightly is what is really causing us to miss God's best? When we release control, we create space for God to work in ways we could never have imagined. His plans are often different from ours, but they are always better in the end. The job you lost might open the door to something more fulfilling. The relationship that ended might have protected you from deeper pain. The delay you hate might be God's preparation for a greater blessing, but we can only see these things in hindsight, and sometimes not even then. That's why faith is essential. It allows us to trust when we cannot see. Surrendering control also protects our hearts from bitterness and despair. When we believe everything depends on us, failures become crushing. But when we remember that God holds the outcome, we can endure disappointments without losing hope. We can say, Lord, I did my part. Now I trust you with the rest. This posture frees us from perfectionism and self-condemnation. It helps us live with grace, knowing that our worth and our future do not rest on our performance, but on God's love and faithfulness. Releasing the illusion of control is not about giving up. It's about giving over to the one who truly knows and loves us. It is trading anxiety for peace, fear for faith, and striving for rest. It is choosing to believe that God's hands are safer, stronger, and wiser than our own. And when we live this way, we discover the truth that peace beyond understanding isn't found in controlling life's storms, but in knowing the one who calms them. Today, take a deep breath. Look at the areas of your life where you're clutching your fists, trying to force outcomes, control people, or guarantee results, and then open your hands. Pray, Lord, I release this to you. I trust you with what I cannot control. In that simple act of surrender, you will find a freedom the world cannot give and a peace that nothing can take away. When life feels heavy and your heart is weighed down by fears, doubts, what it lifts, there is a powerful practice that can transform your inner worlding, replacing worry with prayer and thanksgiving. This is not just a comforting idea. It is a divine invitation and a spiritual discipline that brings real change. Too often we allow our minds to become playgrounds for worry, rehearsing every possible problem and imagining every worst case scenario. But worry has never solved a problem, healed a relationship, or added a single hour to our lives. Prayer and thanksgiving, on the other hand, connect us directly to the one who can do all those things and more. When you pray, something shifts. Your focus moves from the weight of your circumstances to the greatness of your God. Instead of staring at the mountain before you, you begin speaking to the one who can move mountains. Worry keeps you stuck in fear, but prayer opens your heart to faith. Worry isolates you, making you feel alone in your struggle. Prayer reminds you that you are never alone, for God Himself is with you. And when you add thanksgiving to your prayers, your heart is lifted even higher because you start to remember all the ways God has been faithful before. Many people treat prayer as a last resort, something to do when all else fails. But prayer is meant to be our first response, not our final option. Imagine the difference it would make if, at the first sign of anxiety, instead of letting your thoughts spiral, you pause to praying, Lord, I feel anxious about this situation, but I choose to bring it to you. I trust you to work in ways I cannot see. This habit doesn't mean the circumstances will change immediately, but it does mean your perspective will. Prayer doesn't always move the mountain in front of you right away, but it always moves your heart closer to the one who holds your future. Prayer also reminds us of who God is. In the middle of worry, it's easy to forget that God is still sovereign, still loving, still faithful. When you pray, you remind yourself of His promises, saying that He will never leave you nor forsake you, that He works all things together for good for those who love Him, and that His plans for you are for hope and a future. Speaking these truths out loud turns your prayer time into a declaration of faith, pushing back the darkness of doubt and fear. Adding thanksgiving to prayer changes the atmosphere of your heart. Worry focuses on what might go wrong, but thanksgiving focuses on what God has already done right. It is impossible to remain in deep anxiety while sincerely thanking God for his past faithfulness. You might start by thanking him for specific answered prayers, protection you didn't even realize at the time, the love of family or friends, or simply the fact that you woke up to see another day. As you do this, your heart begins to remember, if God was faithful then, why wouldn't he be faithful now? This practice doesn't deny the reality of your struggles. It doesn't ask you to pretend everything is perfect. Instead, it invites you to anchor your soul in a deeper reality that God is greater than your problems and his goodness isn't canceled by your pain. You can be honest with him about your fears while still thanking him for his goodness. That balance of raw honesty and genuine gratitude is what keeps prayer from becoming a ritual and turns it into a living conversation with your Creator. Another powerful effect of prayer and thanksgiving is that it helps you release control. When you worry, you carry your burdens tightly, trying to figure out every detail yourself. When you pray, you open your hands and offer those burdens to God. It is an act of trust, saying, Lord, I can't fix this on my own, but I know you can. And when you thank him, you're already celebrating his involvement, even if you haven't yet seen the outcome. This is faith in action on praising him on credit, trusting that he is at work behind the scenes. Over time, this habit transforms your default response to challenges. Instead of falling into patterns of fear, you develop a reflex of faith. When bad news comes, your heart remembers to pray first. When doubt whispers, your spirit remembers to give thanks. This doesn't mean you will never feel fear again, but it does mean that fear will no longer have the final word in your life. Your spirit becomes trained to turn to God instead of sinking into despair. Beyond the personal benefits, prayer and thanksgiving also change how you impact others. When your life is marked by peace and gratitude, even in difficult times, people notice. Your peace becomes a testimony, a living example of what it means to trust God beyond understanding. It shows others that faith is not just words, but a way of life that brings real comfort and strength. Your gratitude becomes contagious, inspiring others to see God's goodness in their own lives. It's also important to remember that prayer doesn't always mean long hours or perfect words. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are simple and honest. Lord, help me. God, I trust you. Thank you for being with me. Prayer is less about saying the right thing and more about turning your heart toward him. And thanksgiving doesn't require everything to be going well. It often carries the most power when it rises from a heart that chooses to see blessings even in the middle of battle. In the end, replacing worry with prayer and thanksgiving isn't about ignoring your problems. It's about inviting God into them. It's about moving your eyes from what scares you to the one who saves you. It's about transforming anxiety into an opportunity for intimacy with him. And the more you do this, the more you'll discover that peace beyond understanding isn't just possible. It becomes your daily reality. The next time worry tries to settle in your mind, pause, breathe, whisper a prayer, however simple, then thank God for one thing, however small. You'll find that your heart begins to lift, your mind begins to calm, and the storm inside you begins to still. Because in prayer and thanksgiving, you're not just talking to God. You're making space for his peace to reign in your heart, no matter what is happening around you. Peace beyond understanding is not born from perfect circumstances, but from knowing deeply and personally the unchanging character of God. Life will test you with uncertainty, disappointment, and unexpected turns. But when your peace is anchored not in what happens around you, but in who God is, you discover a steadiness that cannot be shaken. This truth is what turns fragile hope into unwavering faith and transforms anxious striving into calm surrender. Many people base their peace on what they can see, touch, or control. They feel secure when the bills are paid, relationships are smooth, and plans unfold just as they hoped. But as soon as life changes, and it always does, their peace disappears. That kind of peace is fragile because it depends on the shifting sands of circumstances. True peace, the peace that surpasses understanding, comes from something much deeper. It flows from knowing that no matter what changes in life, God remains the same, in faithful, loving, just, and sovereign. It begins by remembering that God is faithful. Throughout Scripture, we see countless examples of his faithfulness. He kept his promise to Abraham even when it seemed impossible. He protected Joseph, turning betrayal and imprisonment into a position of influence that saved nations. He led the Israelites through the desert, providing manna each day and guiding them by cloud and fire. These stories aren't just ancient history. They reveal the heart of God, a God who keeps his word, who finishes what he starts, and who never abandons his people. When you remember his faithfulness in the past, it becomes easier to trust him with your future. Beyond faithfulness, God is also good, perfectly, unchangingly good. This goodness doesn't mean life will be free from hardship. Instead, it means his intentions toward you are always for your good, even when the path is painful. When you truly grasp this, it transforms how you see your challenges. Rather than asking, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, God, what good are you bringing out of this? This shift doesn't remove the pain, but infuses it with purpose and hope. God's love is another unchanging foundation for your peace. His love isn't based on your performance, your past mistakes, or your ability to always do the right thing. It is rooted in his nature, which means it cannot fail. When you fall, his love lifts you. When you doubt, his love reassures you. When you feel alone, his love surrounds you. Knowing that nothing can separate you from this love, not failure, not fear, not even death, brings a confidence that circumstances cannot destroy. His sovereignty also gives deep peace. To know that God is in control, not just of the big moments, but of every detail, is incredibly freeing. It means you don't have to see the whole picture to trust him. Even when life feels chaotic, God is working behind the scenes, weaving every thread into a greater tapestry that reveals his wisdom and glory. It is this sovereignty that turns surrender from something frightening into something comforting. You're not letting go into emptiness. You're placing your life into the hands of a perfect, all-knowing God. This peace is not passive or naïve. It doesn't deny reality or pretend pain isn't real. Instead, it stands strong in the middle of storms because it rests on who God is, not on what life looks like. When David faced Goliath, his courage wasn't in the size of his stone, but in the greatness of his God. When Daniel entered the lion's den, his peace wasn't in his ability to escape, but in God's power to deliver or sustain him even if he didn't. This same peace is offered to you, not because you are strong, but because God is. Anchoring your peace in God's character also helps you navigate waiting seasons. Waiting can be one of life's greatest tests because it exposes our fears and impatience. But when you trust God's goodness and timing, you learn to wait with hope instead of worry. You remember that delays aren't denials and that God sees what you cannot. You find rest in the truth that his plans are worth the wait because they come from a heart that loves you perfectly. Another powerful result of resting in God's character is that you become less shaken by people's opinions and actions. When your identity and security come from him, criticism loses its sting and praise loses its power to control you. Then you stop striving to prove yourself and start living from a place of acceptance. This frees you to love others more deeply because you're no longer depending on them to define your worth. As you walk daily in this truth, peace begins to permeate every area of your life. It shows up in how you face challenges, not with panic, but with quiet confidence. It shows up in your prayers, which move from desperate pleading to trusting conversation. It shows up in your relationships, where you become more patient and forgiving because you're secure in God's love. It even shows up in your decisions as you learn to choose faith over fear, guided by the knowledge of his wisdom and care. Ultimately, this peace is a gift that grows as you deepen your relationship with God. It's not something you can force or manufacture. It flows naturally from knowing him more intimately. The more you experience his faithfulness, the more convinced you become that he truly is who he says he is. And the more convinced you are, the less room fear and anxiety have to live in your heart. So take time to remind yourself daily of who God is. Reflect on his promises. Remember his past faithfulness in your life and speak these truths over your fears. When doubt whispers that you're alone, answer it with the truth that God will never leave you. When fear says the future is uncertain, respond with the truth that God holds your future. Over time, you'll find that peace beyond understanding isn't just something you visit on good days. It becomes your steady home built on the unshakable character of God. In this place, even when life surprises you, you remain anchored. Because while you may not know what tomorrow holds, you know the one who holds tomorrow, and that makes all the difference. Dear friend, put it all in God's hands doesn't mean you stop caring or trying. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to bear alone. It means exchanging anxiety for trust, fear for faith, and worry for worship. When you do, you'll discover a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. A peace that truly surpasses all understanding. So today, make the choice and lay it all down at his feet and find rest for your soul. The one who holds the universe can surely hold your life. And in his hands, you will find not just peace, but purpose and power to live fully, boldly, and freely.